let's talk now, shall we, to the government. We can talk to the Work and Pensions Secretary, Pat McFadden, who's here. Good to see you.
Good morning.
So you're introducing legislation today to scrap the two-child limit. So in other words, this is the cap on the amount of benefits people receive if they have more than two children. How much is that going to cost?
It will cost, once it's fully enforced, about £3 billion a year.
And just talk through why you think it's £3 billion well spent.
We came into office with a manifesto commitment to reduce child poverty. We did it the last time we were in power. Child poverty has risen by about 900,000 since 2010. I don't see this just as a cash transfer in terms of that £3 billion. I see it as an investment in children's futures, because we know that children from the poorest families will end up doing less well at school. Less than a quarter of them get 5 good GCSEs. We know they're 4 times more likely to have mental health problems later in life. As the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, I can tell you the cost of that in terms of increased sickness and disability benefits when people become adults. So it's not just about a cash transfer. It's actually an investment in trying to change the story of these children's lives. Now, it is a financial cost, and that's why we didn't rush to do it. We took our time. We looked at all the options. We looked at different ways of doing this, and this was the single best way to lift over 400,000 children out of poverty.
So there's pressure, obviously, on the government to reduce the welfare bill. So if this is a cost of £3 billion, and look, I know what you're saying about savings down the line, etc., are you working on other savings to the welfare bill, and where?
The biggest thing that I've seen since I became the Secretary of State 4 months ago is the growing number of young people who are not in education, employment or training. And that's where I've placed my early emphasis for one good reason. You talk about money and costs, and you're quite right. For every young person who goes on to benefits and stays there, they will lose about £1 million in earnings over the course of their lives.
So it's working
and
age.
We'll pay £1 million in benefits and other costs. So it really makes sense to emphasise the young in this debate.
Working age benefit claimants, effectively, is what this
Yes,
is
young
saying.
working age benefit claimants. I mean, look, there are issues throughout the system.
And is that often sickness, disability benefit, mental health claims, I guess, anxiety? Is that what we're talking about?
Let me give you another number that's really struck me, is that the proportion of young people not in education, employment or training who cite sickness as the reason for being so has doubled in the last 10 years. And a lot of that is mental health, neurodiverse conditions. And the truth is, often work or training or positive activity is a good response to these conditions rather than just paying benefits. So we've really got to look at what we're spending on here and how we're investing the money that we do.
Can I be... It's a bit hard to work out where this government is on welfare, right? Because, you know, you came into office saying you weren't going to scrap the two-child benefit, and then you did scrap it. You said you were going to cut sickness benefits, and then you weren't, and now it feels like you're saying you are again. It's a bit confusing. Do you accept that?
Look, we had to go through a process to get to the right decision on this two-child limit. I think it's an investment in the future, but if you ask me where do you really stand on welfare, my single answer would be changing the life story of the young, too many of whom at the moment are being thrown on the scrap heap.
You've put out that argument very, very clearly, but you can see how for a lot of people who might not be, you know, covering every tiny thing of what every minister like you is saying in interviews like this, although obviously I wish everyone was, it's a bit of a confused picture.
Well, it shouldn't be, because I've talked consistently about young people since being appointed. We've produced a youth guarantee to get more training to young people. We are changing the apprenticeship people to emphasise young people. I've asked former Health Secretary Alan Milburn to do me a report on this. I think the message
so you come in and you've sorted it all out.
Well, I don't say that. I say I've made a start.
Forget what the other guys
emphasis is on young people.
Can we talk about AI? Because it feels a little bit to me, honestly, like any discussion we have on work, on getting young people in particular into work, we cannot ignore the massive elephant in the room that is going to change everything, right? I mean, how worried are you about the impact this is going to have on the jobs market? Because it feels to me like a lot of the jobs that we thought were really safe, like accountancy or coding, you know, forget that. young people need totally new skills. I mean, are you even considering things like universal basic income? I mean, like, how radical do we need to be here?
I'm not considering that, but I think you're absolutely right to raise this question of AI, because when we talk about the jobs market, we often just talk about tax and spend policies. It's frankly missing a lot of the point. You're absolutely right to say that AI will change the jobs market. Look, I think like any technology, there is no point in pretending we can make this go away. So the task for government is how do you equip and train young people and so on. For many jobs, it won't be AI that replaces your job, but it might be the person who's learned to use AI. So it's really important that we equip young people to do that. And also, frankly, that we make the UK a good home for this investment in terms of the companies that are going to develop this technology. So I think we're only in the foothills of this at the moment. It will change the labour market.
If you were
There's no hiding from it.
If you're advising your own kids, what jobs would you say they should train into?
Well, I've got teenage
yeah, so
children.
What are you saying? What are you saying?
And
I'm genuinely quite intrigued. Like, what are the AI-proof careers?
They're not quite ready to make those decisions, but it is something that we talk about. And I'll tell you, young people are really alive to this.
Okay.
They think about this. They want a job that lasts.
So, Colin, could give them a bit of advice. What professions?
Well, my advice is get yourself as best education as you can, and that's your first platform.
Yeah.
And then your choices will go from there.
Can I talk a bit about the international issues? Because
yes,
I know you're probably limited in what you can say, but look, it's been an unbelievable start to 2026. Donald Trump's captured the Venezuelan president. He's made threats about acquiring Greenland. Is the American president a reliable ally?
Well, let me say two things. First of all, the alliance between the UK and the US is really important. I want to emphasise to your viewers that this partnership on a security and intelligence level keeps Britain safe every day. So it's in our national interests to work very closely with the US, as we did yesterday with the seizing of the tanker in the Atlantic. But the second point I'd make is the world has changed in the last year, and any government, including our own, has to adapt to that. That's why it's right that we increase defence spending, as we're doing. That's why it's right that we play a leading role in working with other European countries.
Is he a reliable ally?
The United States is a reliable ally. We believe that to be the case. We see that every day, but we also know the world is changing, and we've got to step up, and Europe's got to step up. And actually, President Trump, he may have his own style. He's not the first US president to say that. And I think the thing that we've really got to understand about this new world is that hard and soft power have to go together, and you have to have the capability to exercise both.
I would just had one question, other question I wanted to squeeze in on that oil tanker. Shadow fleets have been operating for a while, right? We know this, supplying Russia, Iran, etc. Why now?
Well, I don't think we should think that we've only been taking action against shadow fleets starting yesterday. It was a very high-profile operation. There was another one in the Caribbean. But as John Healey said to my colleague, the Secretary of State for Defence, said to Parliament last night, this is part of an ongoing global effort to crack down on these shadow fleets. And it's really important because the money from this illicit oil can go to funding either terrorism or Russia's war effort in Ukraine.
Every day, are we?
But we don't always comment on what our military is involved in, but we were very happy to be involved yesterday because we saw it as being in our national interest, and that's always the North Star.
Pat McFadden, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.